back to another episode of the Dr. Supercoach podcast, powered by Code Sports. You're on this week with Pistol, and I have one of the better guests that we've had all season. Welcome to the podcast, Pig. How are you?
Hey, you keep calling me a guest every week, and I keep feeling honoured. But I'm here. You can't get rid of me now. I'm here forever.
It's true. You can never leave. Sorry.
That's all. How did you go this weekend? How was your scoring?
I didn't have the best week, which is all right. I scored 2064. I only had 18, which wasn't ideal when one of them was Clark, only scoring 30 odd. But, I fell a little bit in the ranks, but not too much. I'm down to 1,494. So that means across the whole buys, I fell 30 spots. Not the end of the world. I didn't have a good buys, to be honest with you, Pig. I pretty much had 18 or 19 every week, so it wasn't a great showing by myself. But nonetheless, we move on. I'm excited for this week. How did you go, though?
I feel like a lot of people had kind of 18 or 19 every single week. Like normally you'll have a week where you have 22 or something, but maybe it was... My gut feeling is it's kind of rookies not playing. Like normally we have more rookies that we can rely on field. But there were a lot of them just got dropped and whatnot or were injured. So maybe that's a little bit of why. But I had a good week this week, 21-25, which is nice. Moved me up about 2,000 spots. I'm like at 8.6K now. Like I said, I've just been treading water kind of around this 9K all season. But team's complete, 22 premiums, 4 trades left. So it's up to my boys now. I'm not really making many changes unless there's a longer term injury, so it's up to my team to push a bit and see how we go.
Perfect.
I did have the LDU vice captaincy, which I think kind of gave me that nice platform this week.
It's unlike you to nail the captaincy choice, Pig.
Who would have thought?
No, you've done exceptionally well on the captaincies, and big shout out to you calling Tom de Koning as your pod VC this week. I mean, that's absurd.
That was such a fun one.
And I know a lot of people traded him in as well because of your advice. So that was well done by you, but we'll circle back to that in a little bit. And the SuperCoach, Dr. SuperCoach Cup is starting this week. It's very exciting. Thank you to everyone that followed the instructions, all 349 of you. That's about 150 odd less than last year. So look, people find ways not to follow instructions, but they are up on Patreon. Please read them. Please follow it. If you're stuck, just message myself on Slack and I will help you. But please try. It's very hard to manually chase people up for this. So we probably won't do that. But it is very exciting to launch this week. And on the back of that, we had a couple of patron signups. So big shout outs to Matthew Billy, to Peter Zolkas, Nectar, great name, and Jamie Duggan. Thank you very much for signing up. And hopefully you can follow the instructions. If you need help, message me on Slack so we can put you in the cup. We'll probably close the cutoffs, let's say tomorrow night. Maybe even less than that. I don't know. Just do it tomorrow, please. Gives us time to make the bracket and all that sort of stuff. So that would be awesome. Pig, I'm sorry for talking so much. I'm already sick of my own voice, but there was some movement in the Cancer Council direction. Thank you very much to Jay Webbs, who's donating for dumb luck. Had the VC on Grundy. This was last week. Got ready to loophole after the game when I realized I had the C on LDU and the North game had already started. Thought I'd bottled it until some crazy last quarter scoring from LDU got me an even better score, which is awesome. Actually, it was this week, which is hilarious.
Yeah, gained him 20 points.
To Warren Gordon, thank you for your very generous donation. He's donated for my absence from Slack, my numerous dumb things this year. Cheers, Warren. He's an absolute legend, a great member of our Slack, and he's put us perfectly to a very round number, which I know was on purpose, and I appreciate it. We are officially $500 short of the 30,000 mark, so 29,500. I am so hopeful that we get there at the by the end of this season. That would be awesome. So Fingers crossed. And Pig, I'm finally going to ask you a question. You are a valued member of this podcast. I swear. I absolutely swear.
This is a Pistols monologue podcast.
Oh my God, I'm already sick of it. So I'll throw the very first long question and you can monologue. Noah H has asked in our podcast questions a great one. He said, would love some chat about how to get an edge on the rest of the competition for the rest of the season, with most teams looking pretty decent this year. Is it a matter of trading bottom end premiums to pod premiums like Sinclair O'Neill, etc., who look like good back of the end options, or should I be picking up a loophole like Kerno at F7? Cheers. Now, Pig, please, I know you've spent a lot of time researching this answer. I'd love to welcome a new, let's call it segment. I don't know how far we'll push it, but please go through with us Pig's Pods.
Pig's Pods, you're right, I have done some research. And just to answer that question, I'm very much of the opinion that if you really want to differentiate yourself, it should be getting a point of difference and having all 22 players kind of cashed on field. I think if you've got a Kerno like 450k on the bench, that's not really making you money. Or no, it's not really making you points. So I feel like it's kind of wasted if you're trying to really climb the ranks. You and I think, like, we often talk about the 23rd premium or not having that. We can go into that a bit later, but in terms of actually if you want to really differentiate yourself, I think it's going for a pod. And so I did have a look, and I've gone through and I'm looking at here people with less than 10% ownership. And I found, 19, so kind of about 5 on every line.
Here we go.
So
strap in.
What I might do is I might read them, and then once I'll finish the 5 defenders, and then I want you to pipe up, Pistol, and say if there's any you would kind of put the brakes on and say, actually, nah, I probably wouldn't do that.
All right, let's do it. I'm excited.
All right. And not in any particular order. This is just as I wrote them down. Jeremy McGovern is actually in only 7.9% of teams.
Wow.
I think you and I have owned him for weeks, and Slack have been really hot on him for like a month or two. So I think we're probably surprised that it's that low.
I am. That's great. He's awesome.
But yeah, McGovern is an awesome pod. He's 545k. He's averaging 106 on the season, and he's got the 4th easiest run coming home from designated kickers. So I think that's a really, really good option.
Yep.
Nick Newman is only in 1.9% of teams. He's 521k. He's averaging 103 in his last 5. So it's not massive numbers, but 2 of those were 140s. So he's a guy with a spike ability.
Yep.
And they've also got the 3rd easiest run coming home for designated kickers. This one might actually be my favourite. I've been kind of dropping his name subtly for a few weeks, and I think I gave him big raps a couple of weeks ago. But Jack Sinclair,
yes,
6.2% ownership, 581k. So you're paying a fair bit for him. But if it's your last upgrade, you can do that. He's averaging 128 in his last 3. And he's got the easiest run in the game coming home for attacking defenders.
Oh, my God.
He also plays 8 of his last 9 at Marvel, where he averages better at Marvel than he does elsewhere. So Jack Sinclair, I just love that as a pod.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. That's really, really good.
Then I've got 2 cheaper guys if you can't afford 500k. I think Will Powell is actually quite a good option. 0.6% of teams. 484k. He's actually averaging 109 in his last 3.
Wow.
And they've got the 4th easiest run coming home for those attacking type defenders. So it's a bit of an out there one, but I don't mind Will Power.
There's a lot of defender options.
And I'm not done. One more.
Oh my God.
Is Trent Rivers in 0.5% of teams. This is kind of more if you're a little bit strapped for cash. He's 451k. So a bit of a cheaper maybe D6 to round out your team. He had 131 in his last game playing full-time midfield with Petrarca injured. They do have a tough run, like for inside mids coming home, but if you're someone of his talent playing inside mid, there's some meat on the bone there. Are there any of those you dislike?
Dislike's a strong word. I like all of them, and Trent Rivers is by far the riskiest option.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind it. Like, you're right. If you're picking by the role, he's got the role. So there's absolute upside there. So I'm not really going to say too much about it. I guess at the same price, Massimo's had 5 tons in a row, and
Yep.
that's seems quite good. Not as much of a POD, but probably is.
I
Probably,
believe he was in that less than 10% when I filtered.
yeah, he's probably there. And I imagine there's some other PODs I like as well. Ed Richards, 5 run average of
Oh,
111.
he might still be to come.
He's okay. Well, there we go. Spoilers. And I was genuinely shocked that you didn't go with your breakout contender, your Mitch Hinge. He's got a
I did
5 round of 107.
Yeah, Mitch Hinge, I did think about him, and I wouldn't talk people off him. I didn't actually have a look what their run was. Didn't come up in the easy run, but let's have a look right now.
As long as it's not the worst run, then
It's kind of neutral for designated kickers, I'd say Mitch is. Or maybe you could call him an attacking defender. A bit the same, kind of neutral matchup for Adelaide for both of those. So
honestly,
not,
if you're trying to break ranks, though, it's Sinclair. Like, there's no other option. Like, he's so far better than all those other options.
Yeah, if you can afford Sinclair, I think I'm probably going to put him in the top 8 mids coming home, even that kind of thing. So yeah, Sinclair, awesome. McGovern and Newman, if you don't quite have that money, I think are going to be really good. And Pods, and if you're really strapped, I don't mind Will Powell or Trent Rivers.
Yep, good call.
Then we go to the midfielders, and the guy with the highest 5-round average in the league, Luke Davies-Uniacke, is only in 8% of teams.
Jeez, you got to pay up for it, though.
You've got to pay $635K, which is probably too much. You probably don't have that anymore.
No, I never had that.
No. I mean, I just looked at my history. I paid $715 for Tim English, so I did have that.
Jeez.
That's the derailing. Anyway, LDU, 8% ownership. He's averaging 136 in his last 5, which is first in the league. And they've got the second easiest run for inside mids coming home. So that's kind of why I still really like him. But I doubt people are going to be able to afford him. But if you can't afford him, his teammate George Wardlaw, only in 5% of teams, he's just a bit over 500K. Oof. He's actually averaging 119 in his last 3, and he's just looked incredible.
Yes. It's such a scary pick because the rookies just drop off at any point in time. Like, any moment, he just might become a spud, even though he looks amazing right now. And 500K is not cheap. Like, he's gone up over 100K last couple of weeks. Like, he was in the 300s. I think it was briefly mentioned during the buys. But yeah, that would be a ballsy pick at 500K.
I think I saw someone say that if you trade it when we were looking for people coming off that first buy, if you had got George Wardlaw for like 200K less, he's scored more than Chad Warner in that time.
Gosh. That makes
and you know think. Which one I got?
Yes, I do.
Anyway, George Wardlaw, yeah, and second easiest run for inside mids coming home, so that's also another bonus for him. Then this one I really love. I haven't actually written his price down, so I'll just search that while I'm talking. But Will Day.
Yep.
He's been awesome. He's, averaging 121 in his last 5. He's only in 2.4% of teams.
That's huge. He's
576, so he's gone up. He's only gone up 30K since his starting price. So he might still be affordable. I think he's awesome. And they've actually got one of the 5th easiest run for inside mids coming home. So I think Will Day is an awesome option. Then I wouldn't mind your thoughts on this one because Jack Crisp only has 2.6% ownership and he's averaging 114 in his last 3.
Oh, and to go is meant to be a test.
Yeah, and they've got the 3rd easiest matchup for inside mids coming home. So I guess it's just the returning players that scares me.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I mean, Chris has been fantasy relevant for a very long time, and he doesn't have this upside. He's a known commodity. He's in a great purple patch, but we've seen him at his best before, and he doesn't score this high. So I don't think he can do it for the whole season.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And then the boy you alluded to earlier, Ed Richards, 1.8% ownership, averaging 111 in his last 5. The run's not amazing. It's kind of neutral, like medium of the pack run. So it's not like he's got this juicy matchup like the other guys do. But he's playing full-time mid. He's one of their main CBA guys, and he looks incredible. 540K. So those names I've mentioned there, any of those you really like over the others? I think I would recommend Will Day, or maybe it's Ed Richards.
Honestly, I think it's Jack Sinclair still. He's defender mid.
Yeah, well, that's true. We can still slot him in there.
I think he's probably still the number one pick. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, look, any of those Bulldogs boys could be anything, right? Like Treloar is in 2% of teams and averaged 116 for the year.
Yeah.
And that might just continue happening.
I think I saw a stat floating around Slack that he might be averaging like 106 or something when Libba plays.
Yeah. Or Libba's back and he's 560k.
Actually,
Libba's pretty good. He's in 1% of teams.
Yeah, you're right. That could be a really nice option. What's he doing?
I mean, they said he'd play more half forward, I think. But they need to win games at the end of the year, and it's pretty hard to win games when your like best midfielder isn't more in the midfield towards the crunch time end of the season. In that round 14, Libba did only have 59% CBAs from like his usual 70-ish odd. And Ed Richards was pushed out to the 49% CBAs, but he's usually, I think he was the top CBA guy. No, he was. I'm looking at it now. He was the top CBA guy when Libba was out too. Yep. He's really lost part of his role, and Treloar just didn't flinch. Like his CBAs are exactly the same. So I think between Bont, Libba, and Richards, they might all share the CBA split, but it might be Treloar as the POD guy, and I'm not sure if it's just variance when he's alongside Libba, but it's certainly an interesting stat. Can I throw one back at you?
Yeah, before we do, I do want to say that I really actually do like Libba as a pod, like 560k. I agree with you that Bulldogs think they're still in the premiership window, and if they want to be winning and making finals, they want Libba doing well. He's actually, the last 2 games since he's come back, he's gone at 1.3 and 1.4 points per minute, which is not sustainable. That's really high. But it's showing he's still scoring really well. He just had lower game time, probably because he had a bit of a layoff.
Yeah. No, that's a really good stat. So there's a very under 1%. So talking about PODs, right. Tim Taranto at 560k, 5-round average of 112.
Yeah, I don't mind this. I just, like, he is the main guy in that Richmond midfield that's...
Melbourne, Richmond, the same at the moment.
I think they're both falling apart. Yeah, he's the main guy in that midfield. He's a really good player. He's always been someone that's a lot more Dream Team relevant than Supercoach because he just butchers it. But like he showed in the first half of last year that he can be really, really Supercoach relevant. So this is one I don't mind this at all. I actually, I'm a Toronto fan outside of kind of Supercoach. So he's someone I wouldn't mind having in my team, and he's got the ability to put those 150s out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's quite a good option.
Did you find anyone on the really cheap side, or are they all, I guess, 500k plus?
No, I didn't really dig that. The kind of, I guess you could swing Rivers or...
That's true.
Simpkin, who I'll talk about in the forward line, Hollands. There's a few guys in the forward line that I'll talk about that can go in the mid. So I guess they're the mids you could look at.
All right.
But no, I went a little bit more expensive in the mids. Ruck, I did find a few Ruck pods with nice matchups coming home. First one I'll start with is Sean Darcy. 0.3% ownership. He's actually averaged 113 in his last 3. It is buoyed a little bit by that last game. He does have a tough run for Ruckman coming home, so it's not as exciting. But he's one of those Ruckmen that could just pump out a 180 on any given day. He's had seasons where he's kind of done that for a stretch of time. So not really someone I'd necessarily recommend. But if you want to get really freaky, Sean Darcy's he's not a bad option.
But it's pretty scary trading in someone who's so injury prone, as one of your final trades.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely, it is. And then Rowan Marshall is actually down to 8% ownership.
Wow.
Yeah, he's absolutely dropped. So he's averaging 107 on the season. That's not what he's doing last year, but it's not horrible. he does have a kind of tough run up until SuperCoach finals. So he's someone that I wouldn't trade in if you're playing for rank, but if you're playing for leagues and you still need a ruckman for some reason, or you want a pod for your league matchup, SuperCoach finals, I think Rowan Marshall's going to finish the last 4 rounds really, really strong. Then we go Toby Nankervis. He's only in 1.1% of teams. He's averaging 131 in his last 3. Like, he's kind of pulling it out in his last 3, and actually has the easiest run for all rucks coming home.
Wow.
So it's a bit different, and like I'd kind of see him as like a 109 kind of average guy, but he has lifted in the last 3, and he maybe could keep it up with that easy run. And then probably the best option is my boy Tom De Koning. I had to include him because he's only in 5% of teams, but he's averaging 154 in his last 3, Pistol.
It's nuts. It is absolutely nuts. And not just that, like, it doesn't really look like a fluke. Like, it looks like he's doing... This is what he was made to do. Like, it all looks like skill. I was going to ask you, though, I mean, who will be the best 2 rucks from this point onwards? Like, if you're starting your team again and you're picking 2 just for the remaining rest of the season, and I know it's hard to be, so forward thinking when the appeal to just look at the previous couple of weeks is so strong, but like, who would you pick now, clean slate, as your 2 rucks for the rest of the season?
I think I'd still have to have Max Gawn number 1. I just think he's shown it so many times and just time and time again. And even this year, like, I think he's been my number 1 captain option more than anyone else. So he's still getting it done. I've still got to back him, I think. Although he hasn't had the best few weeks, we can admit that. Number 2, I know you and I often... can I call it a tie between Brodie Grundy and Tim English?
No, you can't.
All
right, to choose now.
I think I'm going to give Tim English by 0.2 points. English has... Well, his last few games when he's looked quite aggressive, he's looked good. I still think he's, got the 115 average in him. I don't think he's necessarily... the 129 or whatever he had last year. Actually, I'm certain he's not that, but still 115. But then on the flip side, Brodie Grundy still has a really nice run coming home. So I would be very happy with either of them. Tom De Koning, I was just mentioning him. 3rd easiest run for ruckman coming home as well for TDK. So if Pitnet doesn't come in, he could actually push those guys. I'm just not sure, like a kind of first-time ruckman if he can sustain it for 9 more weeks, but maybe he can.
I didn't have English in my top 4 rucks on the way home from this point onwards.
Right. Who have you got?
We're in a strong disagreement. I think my number 1 is Brodie Grundy above Max Gawn. And that's in his last 3 weeks, he's had 28, 31, and 24 disposals. That wasn't a hit-out number. And I think he's taking right now is really in the groove with these disposal numbers. Like, the couple times early in the season, he had 8 disposals, 19, 15, 19, 16, 15. And now he's just gone to the next level. We're getting high 20s in the disposals. And his 5-round average is up to 126. His 3-round average is 143. And the way that he's looking, I think it's sustainable. He's just playing really well. And we've seen from him before that he can be a high disposal ruckman. So it's not completely out of the ordinary. So I'm pretty hot on him because he doesn't just have to rely on the hit-outs, which he is also doing. So
it was really interesting just watching him against Briggs on the weekend. Like, Briggs just could not go. Briggs just doesn't look good at the moment. But yeah, I feel like anyone could have had 25 on him the way he's going. But so, like, Grundy's had 3 of the primest matchups that he pretty much could in the last 3 weeks. I don't expect his 3-round average to continue, but I do agree with you that, like, he's an amazing option.
It's just all about the disposals. I haven't really even looked at the hit-outs that much. Because if you're getting, 28 touches a game for a ruckman, you're going to score very well.
Yeah.
And then I probably like the upside of Tom De Koning. I know it sounds absurd, but his last 4 scores as the number 1 ruck is completely absurd. Coupled with, you just said how great his ruck run is. For those that are not paying attention, his last 4 ruck scores have been 131, 140, 146, 176 as a POD. Like, that's some seriously high scores. And not in crazy high time on ground either, which is pretty nuts. Like, he's playing mostly in the 90-minute range, which is like, on the bench for over 20% per game. It's crazy. His points per minute is out of this world. The risk of Pitney coming back is a bit scary. I can see Gawn and him being a pretty tough decision on the run home. Honestly, I'm too risk adverse to do Tom De Koning over Gawn, but it would be fun until it's not. I think if I handle my heart, if it was me, I'd be doing Grundy and Gawn, but I would like to believe that I would have a bit of fun factor into Tom De Koning. And Nank with that ruck draw, as you just said, 1% of teams, 130. He looks really good as well, eye test wise. And I think he's just looking a little bit stronger at the moment than Old English, who is doing okay, but I don't think he's setting the world alight. I think he'll probably, I'll say, like a limp home with a 115 average, which is still fantastic, but just not quite up to the ceiling of some of the other guys.
I probably won't dispute any of that. I think that's all fair.
Rucks are great. We need more rucks.
Maybe we need a utility spot. I know that's on the bench, but maybe we need a third ruck spot on the field or something.
Premium utility spot. I mean, look, honestly, if all the defenders are, well, not all the defenders, but if a lot of the defenders are outscoring the premium midfielders, why not? Just have 2 utilities and we can just pick and choose. I mean, if they're defenders, they're rucks, they're mids, they're all averaging sort of similar marks. I get why you wouldn't do it before, because you just stuff your team with as many midfielders as possible, but I can't honestly say, well, I know for a fact if I had 2 utility spots right this second, I would be not filling it with midfielders.
No.
I guarantee you I'd be filling it with rucks and maybe Sinclair as a defender.
Yeah, so. Sinclair and De Koning.
Yeah, I probably would, because that would be really fun. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good chat, but I've still got 5 forward pods for people.
Shut up, Pistol. I got to continue.
Yeah, come on, mate. But these got, like, forwards are never going to have the high upside of the other ones. So they're kind of just, they might only differentiate you like 10 points or something. But still, Harry Mackay is actually only in 6% of teams. He's averaging 90 on the season. He has had a bit of a slump lately, hasn't been that great. But he does have the easiest run for key forwards coming home. And he's someone that benefits from no pit net. And when he plays backup ruck, he does score better. Everyone jumped on, well, a lot of people, including me, jumped on Curnow last week. I think that was an awesome move. But I think Mackay is going to be, nearly as good. Then Isaac Rankin is only in 6% of teams.
Yeah,
he's
huge.
He's 571, so you've got to pay up for him. But he's averaging 121 in his last 3. He's got that midfield role. He doesn't have an easy run. Actually, it's kind of a hard run. But he's a star when he plays midfield, so I think he's still a pod. I'm going to call him pod. Elijah Hollins, 2% ownership. If you need someone under 400k, he's 394. He's averaging 97 in his last 3, which is definitely like keeper forward numbers. That's happening because he's getting a lot of midfield time with Chera out. But the only issue is Chera will be back quite soon, so there are some scares there. But I think he's a bit of a talent. He's not someone I would do, but he is a point of difference.
Yep.
Then Jai Simpkin, 2.9% of teams, 400k pretty much on the knocker. He's averaging 98 in his last 3. He does have a tough run for kind of, if he's playing that forward role and pushing up to the mids, it's a bit of a tough run. But as we said with LDU, that if he plays inside mid, they've got the second easiest run coming home. So you probably want to be confident that Simpkin's playing inside mid, but if he is, I think he could be quite a nice option. And then Liam Baker, 2.1% ownership, 453k. Not setting the world on fire, but he's averaging 90 in his last 3, which is kind of fine for a forward. And he does have kind of ability to score higher. He's also got that nice forward defender swing. So if you had him, Zach Fisher, maybe Dawson, whoever else has that DPP, he could be swinging about. Depends where he plays. He's a Swiss Army knife. He plays everywhere. If he does play kind of designated kicker role in defence, they've got the 5th easiest run for that category. So there's a few options there. I know you'd be super keen on Rankin. Is there any of the others you would entertain?
Honestly, probably not. I know there's people like Jeremy Cameron and Graham Myers who are cheap, but as you alluded to right at the beginning, these guys don't really score so well that you can gain that many points on the rest of the competition. Like Rankin is legitimately better by a lot than all these options. And then if you can't afford Rankin because it's really expensive, all these guys are going to average within a couple of points of each other. So you're not really going to be making any ground regardless of who you pick. I do want to point out, though, that the absolute outrage with Mackay in Slack was, like, people are saying, should I trade him back out? Like, there's just some insane chatter. He's still got 20% CBAs as a second ruck. Like, his role is really good, and he just didn't score well this week. It's fine. Most of the time, people have Dylan Moore, such as myself, and when you look at Dylan Moore's scores, outside of that 169, do you know how he's gone in the last 7 weeks?
Not ideal.
74, 89, 73, 66, 76, and 169, of course. Like, this is what happens when you pick forwards that rely on goals. Like, sometimes they put out a 60s, and sometimes they put out 160s. So you just got to, like, wait for it. Take the overall points, and that's all it is. So just take a chill pill and, save the trade, and we can reassess and use it a bit later in the season.
Mackay generally could put a 120 on Richmond this week, and then everyone's forgot about last week.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
So kind of wrapping that up, you and I love Sinclair.
Yeah.
We love Tom de Koning and Rankin. And then there's a few other good options like Will Powell and Ed Richards, McGovern, Newman, maybe even Nank if you were feeling a bit different. He doesn't necessarily have the big spike as the other ones, but there's a few options for people there.
So I'm going to shift, and thank you very much for that. That was a really good list. That was a lot of fun. Some of the other questions this week we've had was Curnow versus Caldwell. Caldwell is on a... I mean, he's averaging 91 for the season. He's probably a 95 guy. 5-round average of 96. Like, that's good for a forward, but he's not like a huge ceiling sort of person. Mm-hmm. How do you see him versus Curnow on the run home?
I mean, I'm a Bombers fan, and I think Bombers fans know that Jai Caldwell is a really, really good player. And if he was at another team where he was able to get kind of 70% CBAs, he would be really, really good. But Bombers just have a lot of mids they're running through there at the moment. And I love him, but I'm worried when Parrish and Setterfield come back, which they should do. Setterfield could be as early as this week. I worry that it kind of pushes Caldwell out a bit. He still has the ability to score. He's kind of often starts as that forward that just pushes up the contest and tags someone. So especially if he gets a tagging role, I think he'll do well. I just think I would rather bank on someone with like the guaranteed role, which is what Curnow has. Caldwell could be thrown around a bit. I mean, I think he's a great option still. I don't think you'll be disappointed with either, but I would go Curnow.
Yeah, I agree. I also like that Curnow, I had noticed it earlier in the season, but the commentators kept pointing out in this game, is that like when it's tight or late in the corner, Curnow goes back and plays as a loose defender. And he just like takes these uncontested grabs, like intercept marks, which is really good for his scoring. So when he's not kicking goals, he's taking intercept marks. So he just does a lot of handy things, and has Richmond this week and the great run home. I think Carlton. I've said it weeks ago, but I think the only 3 competitive teams this year will be Swans, Collingwood, and Carlton. And it's Carlton.
Excuse me.
I know what I said.
Are you missing someone that's third on the ladder?
Oh, jeez. I can't believe you're third after me saying you're going to go bottom 4. It's really embarrassing.
Yeah,
I hope you miss finals.
That's a $500 cancer cancel donation to make up the 30K.
Let's see if if Dons can hold on to a final spot. It's still very tight. Don't get cocky.
I'm not. I'm waiting for it to drop out, but I'm pleasantly surprised.
I do, yeah. Anyway, Caldwell as well. I think people forget how injury prone he has been his entire career. As a junior, he couldn't play more than, what was it, like 7 or 8 games in a row before getting injured, and then he's still injury prone in the AFL system, and he's really putting together a good season now, but it feels risky. It's soft tissues as well has been the main issue. A guy that consistently gets soft tissue injuries. Do I want to use as my final upgrade? It's not ideal, so probably not. I don't really want to do that. Otherwise, Marshall has asked, upgrading McRae at F6 is my last upgrade.
Yes.
Which forward should I grab? Who's got the best run home? Is it? I mean, we've spoken about it. Is it Kerno? If you can't afford Rankin, assuming you have, we'll call them the big 5 or big 4, Flanders, Heaney, Zorko, and Fisher. Is Kerno the next best option from here?
Yeah, I think he is. I put out who I think will kind of be the top 8 forwards last week on Twitter, and I think I had Kerno at F6. I think I had his average a little bit higher than some people expected. I think he could go like 99 for the rest of the year. I think I had him at, which might be a bit high, but
no, that's good.
he went 103 post-bye last year when he was hunting for the Coleman. Obviously, a couple of Eagles spike scores in there, but he also had a couple of 60s in there. So I can't see a reason why Kerno doesn't push 100. And yeah, I think he's the 6th best forward.
So if I do Simpkin versus Graham Myers versus Mackay, which way would you lean?
Gut feel a week or two ago still would have said Mackay, but I'm kind of liking Simpkin if he's going to be getting CBAs. And I haven't paid enough attention to North to know if his scoring has come from the CBAs.
Yeah, but I've been watching North, unfortunately, and a lot of his points are coming from the CBA itself, and he's been really, like, he looked awesome in the middle last week. But it was only 40% CBA, so it's not like he's getting a massive run at it either.
I think 40 is probably enough. Yeah, I'd probably take Simpkin at this stage, like kind of ride the hot hand at this time of year.
You did say they have a good run, but so does Mackay. They both have the best runs for their positions, which is very confusing. I genuinely like going with the better team because I feel like it's more stable.
That's absolutely fair.
So I would lean Mackay, and Simpkin might be great, but I just don't want a bar of it. If they get thumped every game for the rest of the season, they don't look like it at the moment, which is nice, but it's a possibility, and I just don't want a bar of it. So for that reason, I'm out.
Well, same as the first 2 months of the year, LDU was going so bad, and one of the reasons was because North were getting destroyed every week. Now that his scoring and form has coincided with North doing well is awesome, but they're not necessarily able to sustain that. We'll find out.
Is it worth burning an extra trade to go from someone in that 400k bracket just to get up to like a Kerno?
No, I don't think so.
Either.
I think trades are going to be super valuable. Like, I think even last year, if you had a trade in round 24 or whatever the last round was last year, and I didn't, but some people were able to go Darcy Cameron to Nick Larkey or Tex for a 1-week hit for the final week of the round when they were going for the Coleman, and that would have netted you 100 points just in 1 week. So if you could find a couple of easy matchups coming home, you could make 100 or more points pretty quickly just by saving the trade. And I'm not sure Kerner goes 100 points more than Mackay. He might, but it's a reasonable ask.
So then if I evolve the question a little bit more and make it 1 trade for Kerno or 2 trades for Rankin, does that change the equation at all?
I think it depends how many trades you have left. Like, you and I talked to kind of 4.5 being something we'd be comfortable with last week, and I'm still staying with that number because it's only 1 week's change. There's still 9 weeks left.
Yeah.
So if you've got 7 trades, say, and you'll go down to 5 to get Rankin or 6 to get Kerno, that I would be okay with getting Rankin. But if you're going down to 3 to get Rankin or 4 to get Kerno, I would not do that. I'd get Kerno. So
I agree with you, but what I'm saying, I push the friendship here and I say you can't afford Kerno. So now you're in the price bracket of the Mackays and the Simpkins, or one extra trade to get up to the Rankins.
I still think I'm still in the same boat. I would rather Simpkin and 4 trades than Rankin and 3. The line's probably 4.5. If you can get Rankin and still have 5 trades left, do that. That's where I'll put it.
All right, I love it. Based on role, this is the question: who would you let go out of Sexton or Jackson?
Sexton. Although I didn't watch the Gold Coast game, but people were saying he was still playing defence and doing quite well there. They just lost, and I feel like someone's going to get a cull out of there soon, whether it's him or Jeffrey. I heard Flanders played a fair bit more mid to accommodate them, but I'm not sure if that's going to continue. I think it's Sexton, just because, Jackson, he was bad and he's going to be annoying, but he still provides that ruck cover.
It's
a tough one.
It is really tough. So I haven't traded in Jackson the whole season because I was too scared his scoring potential would be too low.
Yeah, I've avoided him.
But I think if you push him to F7, it's totally fine. And you can get away with it because it's great ruck cover. But both of these guys at F6 makes this question so much harder. And I do think it comes down to trades. I hate to say it, but I think if you're going down to 3, I'd rather have Jackson so he can cover the ruck line.
Yep.
And then it's pretty hard. I really don't like either of these picks, to be honest.
I think there's a little segue here a bit. Can we talk a little bit about the 23rd premium? Because you've just said, Jackson at F7 might be all right. We've talked before that I'm not a big fan of the 23rd premium because I want all my cash on field, generating points and doing what I'm paying them for. My stance is that the 23rd premium is all right if it's a really spike score guy. So if you're kind of sitting let's say a Connor Rozee at M9, I don't think that's really the way to play because he's probably going to pretty consistently just get you 105s. And then you're going to be questioning, do I loop that? Do I not? You might get it wrong half the time. I think if you're having a 23rd player, it should be a really big ceiling guy or a low floor guy. So let's say someone like Jordan Dawson or Tom Green this year have given us 150s, but they've also given us 60s. I think that's someone that I'd be pretty happy with, or very happy to have at M9. So you put them on the bench. If they get a spike score, you loop them on. If they get their 60, you don't do it. But if you're kind of, your worst 2 players are if it's a Rozee and then someone else that's just kind of solid, like we're talking about Elijah Hollins and Jai Caldwell, if you're looping those 2, they're probably just both getting you 90s and you're not really looping, and then all that cash that's on the bench not really making you money or not really gaining you points. I'm not really a big fan of that. So how do you feel about that of kind of, if you have a 23rd premium, it should be a real spike score guy rather than just 2 safe 90s?
Yeah, I think the logic is totally there. And honestly, the last couple of weeks we'd spoken about it, that I was starting to turn around and think, maybe all the cash is better on field. And that was, more trades has let us get better teams and we can spend it to optimize the team and have a higher ceiling side. However, things always change, and as they do, one of the major changes of the last couple of weeks has been how in form and in vogue the tagger is. And because there are so many teams that are tagging at the moment, 5 or 6 of them, I think now I want a 23rd premium, not because of the volatility, which I agree, logic-wise, what you said makes perfect sense, but I actually want to have a 23rd premium so that I can avoid the tagger. So when there's a tagger, I can bench the person with the E and see how they go, just in case they get clamped down by Will Phillips and held to, what did Clary score, 26 or something? Something ridiculous. I want to be able to avoid those scores instead. So less about the ceiling and more just avoiding the really terrible scores because of so many taggers back in the game. So I am using Rosie to try and protect against that at the moment, which is quite strange. I don't know. There's a lot of ways to play this game, and I don't know which one will be right or wrong, but I definitely looked at my side and I thought, gee, it would be nice to upgrade like Rao to Zeret, or Tom Green or Dawson or someone to Zeret. And then I'm like, you know what? I'll just get Rosie at his price is such a gift.
That's awesome value.
Could get him with one trade to get him to M9. So I think I'm just going to go that route instead. But it's definitely shifting week by week.
That's a really good point. I hadn't really considered that for the tag. So, like, I've seen your team. You could have Jordan Dawson on the bench with an E because he might get the Toby Bedford tag. And if he does, you just leave him there and then Rosie plays after him, so he'll score. But if Dawson goes really well, then you could loop that. That's
making that change right now. Thank you for that.
Well, there's also, who knows, maybe does Will Phillips go to Bond? I don't think he could really handle him.
No, I don't think so.
Does Jarrah Berry go to Clary? Clary gets clamped again. I think James Jordan will go to Jordan Clark again.
Yeah.
Who else have we got? This is just an impromptu little...
Phillips probably goes to, like, Richards or Libba or Trelaw. I doubt he goes to Dale. That doesn't feel like the right matchup.
I don't know if Carlton will use Chincotta to tag anyone at Richmond. I don't know if that's really needed.
Taranto, Bolton, I don't know.
Yeah, Bolton maybe. I don't know if Windhager has been doing much of a job lately.
He's been trying to.
Someone could go to Merritt, like Mark O'Connor or even Blitzarves could try it, but Merritt's actually scored 125 and 135 in his last two games, and he's been tagged in them both.
He's a machine. He's a super impressive individual.
All right. Have you got any more questions for us?
Yes, I do have a couple. Yo versus Sinclair versus Ryan.
Oh, this is a lot harder than I thought. I think I'm still going to say Luke Ryan because he's done it all year and the way he scores points is just so easy. I traded in Yo just recently. I'm a new Yo owner and loving it. But he's playing the inside midfield role, and it's harder to get points than just chipping it around and bombing it long down the line. So I still think Ryan. Sinclair's kind of the dark horse here. I don't think he can... I wouldn't be surprised if Luke Ryan keeps up a 125 average, and I'm not sure Sinclair's quite got that in him. So I would say Luke Ryan. But the other two are incredible as well.
So can we talk about Luke Ryan for a second? Because I think not most, but many of us bought him after the buy and have been rewarded for a 79 and a 93, which is very upsetting when you pay 666k. And I know we'd spoken about not paying full price, but your last upgrade...
had to, because...
You had to do it. So watching the games before I owned him and after I owned him, I'm sure that was the trigger, they just haven't been passing it as sideways and backwards as they had been in the previous games before that. And I don't know if that's because that's something the opposition has been, I guess, trying to stop, or if it's a different tactic from Fremantle itself, which would just be very frustrating. But it's just not happening. They're not doing the chippy sideways. I noticed very much that Warner pretty much never kicks it sideways. Warner, since his inclusion, just kicks it forwards. It might be the issue. But looking at the Melbourne game, which was pre-buy before everything went wrong, they had 142 marks. And then in the Collingwood game, I probably should have pre-checked this stat and know where it's going to go. They had 101 marks. But then when I look at the last two games, they even had 69 marks one week, and 8 in the 80s. So there's a drop off in marks, and I think it's a game plan change because they're just not doing it. And if it's a game plan change, I want Sinclair. I don't want Ryan. Ryan's upside, he was going 130, which is absurd. But Sinclair's last 5 is 128, so he's in the same ballpark. So I think I would go Sinclair for that run
Interesting.
home, which is maybe a hot take.
A little bit hot, but not outrageous. I'd still go Ryan because like that Bulldogs game, he scored a 79, but him and Clark were essentially getting tagged by Waitman and West. Like they put so much time and effort into those two, and just did not let them off the chain. And then in the end, Ryan got disinterested. And he was also trying to like man Jamara, and that's just an athletic difference that looked very stark. So they put a lot of time into him. I didn't watch the Gold Coast game, but a 93 at Optus against Gold Coast isn't that horrible. I know people are disappointed because they want 130s, but I still think they're coming. Like Sydney this week, well, I've just had a look at the next 5. Sydney this week, they're a really, really easy matchup if you avoid the Jordan tag. And I think Jordan will tag the other Jordan, Clark. So I think Luke Ryan goes nuts. Then he has Richmond, the easiest matchup in the game for defenders. That's when he just had his 197. So he could go off again. Hawthorn, Melbourne and West Coast are all pretty easy matchups for defenders as well. So I think it's more a case of a couple of teams have put work into Ryan and now he's got 5 really easy matchups. So I wouldn't be surprised if we talk in 5 weeks and he's got a 5-round average of 130 or something. But
yeah.
Longmuir, he does come under criticism.
I gave you no help there. I just let you suffer.
JL, he does come under criticism every now and again for that like chippy slow play. And like Freo fans, especially after the Bulldogs game, they were calling for a bit of a change. And he's done this in the past where he'll change it for a few weeks and like, we're cool, we'll go fast. And then that's not really them. So then he reverts back. So I don't know. That's just something I've noticed. We'll see what happens. I think Sinclair, Yo, and Ryan are all incredible picks and you can't go wrong. I'd pick Ryan. You'd pick Sinclair.
Yeah, so you go wrong with Yo.
I don't even want to say that's wrong because he's the best value, I believe, still.
Yeah, I can't get around picking the guy that's made of glass with my final pick.
I did.
I know, and there's situations where you kind of have to if you're cash strapped.
Yeah.
But if you're considering Sinclair and you're considering Yo, you're probably not.
You've got money.
Yeah. So and Luke Ryan's above 600k. So yeah, that's my feelings towards that. I got 2 more questions with you, Pig, before you're free to go. Clayton Oliver's 458k. He just dropped to 32. That's what it was. It was 26 Dream Team. What do owners do at this stage? Because he's now in almost that 5 territory where you're like, are they a primo? It's got a 5-round average of 83. Should people be removing Oliver from their team? And how many trades should they have to consider moving him on? I mean, you can still downgrade him to Rosie.
Yeah, I think everyone should be heavily considering getting rid of Clary. I don't think he's premium this year. Like he showed a little bit that maybe he could, but especially with Petrarca out, he's going to get the tag every single week when they come up against the tagger. He doesn't really have the tank or the preseason to run them around the ground like Merritt does and break it anymore this year anyway. Last week he was just getting so frustrated and spitting the dummy. I don't think he's going to average 100 on the run home, and I think you should be getting rid of him. I think if you had even 4 trades, I would go down to 3 to get rid of Clary. That might be a big call. I wouldn't go down to 2. That just gives me the heebie-jeebies.
It's way too little.
But I would go down to 3 to get rid of Clary because I think he's that bad. And you've got Rosie sitting there who is, like we said, probably just a really safe 105 on the run home. I mean, you got Trent Rivers around the same price or something, even if you want to get a bit different.
You're like, no to Oliver, too risky. Yes to Rivers.
And you were talking about you want to pick players from the good teams. I think Melbourne are going to be in trouble on the run home. I think they're going to lose a lot of games.
Yep, absolutely. And I think I would still... Would you pick Tom Green or Rosie?
Tom Green, definitely.
I don't know why I asked you that. You love Tom Green. It didn't matter who I said. The answer was going to be Tom Green.
Yeah. Tom Green just rewarded me last week.
He did. You only had to wait 17 weeks, but you finally got a response that you needed to see to make it worth it. All right. I've got one more question to you, and I'm gonna talk rookies for a moment. I know.
I haven't even thought about them.
Yes, I'm aware.
Team finished, haven't thought.
So
Go ahead.
There's a couple of options that played the week before last. Nathan Kruger hasn't gone up in price yet. Billy Dowling. We saw Ariel Schoenmaker's only had the one game. And then last week we saw Colton Tholstrup. Now, he's a bit more expensive, 153k. And then you've got all the non-playing players. So I guess it's a two-part question. It's which rookie would you downgrade to that a playing rookie that would you downgrade to? And then if you were to pick a non-playing downgrade option, preferably basement price, but someone that might play games on the run home, which sort of players would you look at?
All right, so if I had the cash, I would get one of Schoenmaker, Dowling, or Kruger, depending on what position you need. Kruger's nice that he can swing and cover your ruck if you need, so that's a nice little, maybe stick him at F8, but you might be able to loop him into the ruck if needed. Dowling's got forward and mid DPP, so that's really nice swing, so I really like him as long as he's named. Schoenmaker looked great in his debut. I really hope he holds his spot because it just looks like an incredible kick and a great player. So he's also a really good option. But I think you and I talked about it last week that if you've got someone like Zach Reed at D8, I'm not that big on getting Schoenmaker because it ruins all your DPP swings. I would rather get a D7, whether it's got forward DPP so you can swing Fisher around or it's a mid DPP so you can swing Dacos and Martin around. That is probably where I'd be thinking. If you've already got DPP with your other defender bench slot, then Schoenmakers is awesome. So I really like those three options. I did watch, but I didn't really notice Tholstrup. But I think he's going to stay in the team. It seems like he's pretty good. Like D's, like we said, a bit decimated, a bit in trouble.
Yeah.
I think he could be good. He's a bit more expensive. He's only got forward status, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's just forward.
Yeah, so that probably turns me off a bit. Kynan Brown. Oh, let's talk. And then, so we'll go with those three. I think are really good options. Pick the one that, obviously, whichever position you need them in. But just if you are getting Schoenmaker, just be aware that he could ruin your loops, your DPP. And then if we go to 102k guys, I think like Kynan Brown's still an option. Yes, he was sub, but at least he was playing. And
yes.
That means he still has a chance to play again. And he's got mid-forward DPP, which I actually needed a mid-forward DPP last week. So he just popped up and perfect. And I didn't really care that he only came on and had one disposal. A game-saving tackle might endear him to the coach to play a bit more. But he's an option. I think Brown for Richmond, who has forward and defence 102k DPP. I think he's a really good option if you want that Fisher swing.
Campbell Gray?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, C. Gray.
Yep.
I think he's a really good he's been going all right in the VFL, it sounds like, but I'm not certain he'll get a game. Although maybe now Tom Lynch going down for another couple of weeks, maybe Bolter has to play forward. Maybe they bring someone in.
Yeah, could be him, could be Blight.
Yeah, Blight's another option that I think is really good, but he doesn't have that forward DPP. So I guess you could just wait for teams and see. But I've actually traded Gray in a couple of other formats, like not even caring who's going to play. He would just allow me to get Fisher into the back line to cover an injury. Geordie Payne for North Melbourne, I think, has been going okay in the VFL. He was the number one pick in the mid-season draft. He could play, but also North are flying at the moment. They might not look to be blooding players. So there are a few that come to mind off the top of my head. Then obviously, if you don't have a 102k guy in the ruck, that's still an option, like a Livingston or someone. Anyone else that you want to bring to the table?
No, that was a way more in-depth answer than I was expecting.
That was off the top of the noggin. I wasn't prepared for that one.
You got through all the good options and didn't leave me with anything to contribute. So thank you for that. I do agree at this stage of the year we probably don't want to be paying up. even though Tholstrup I thought looked very good. I think you're not doing too bad if Kruger doesn't get injured. And Dowling, it's pretty weird. So Dowling played in that kind of like half forward sort of role. But did you see the Crows in round 14? I didn't really talk about it as much as I probably should have at the time, and maybe it comes up in your POD chat, is that Max Michelini has been tagging in the midfield.
He has, yeah.
And then that meant that Laird went back to half-back flank where he wasn't he an All-Australian defender, I think?
Yeah, and a very good Supercoach player there too.
Yeah, so he had 22% CBAs, and he scored 141. And his time on ground was 113 minutes, despite him averaging about 90
That's
flat.
huge.
Yeah, for the previous parts of the season. So, it's a really weird POD because he's not scoring well as a mid, and he's scoring well because of that halfback flank. But then also you're like, how long are they going to keep going with this? Because they're experimenting and they're throwing around players. So,
I mean, that's not a bad one. There were some people in Slack that did that in the first week. It looked really bad, whatever he had the week before that. But then when he went back in defence, looks absolutely great. So it's not a bad option.
I think they'll only use Max there in the middle as a tagger, like when there's someone specific to tag. I don't feel like it's going to be an every week sort of thing because they didn't tag anyone from Richmond.
Yeah.
And I guess why would you? But it's possible they go after Toby Green this week as well to add to my list of potential tags.
Toby or Tom?
Sorry, Tom Green. I mean, maybe Toby, but I did mean Tom.
Michelini's normally a defender. He could just match up with Toby normally.
It's true. Different type of tag, just like playing on your opponent one-on-one.
But yeah, it could be Tom Green. Josh Kelly's cop tags before, who's back and healthy now, could be one of them. It will be one to watch because like there's some guys like Alex Neil-Bullen that I don't think will tag that often. That was like a Dacos specific one. But then there's guys like Barry that seem to be doing it every week, and Jordan doing it every week. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Michelini.
It is going to be very interesting. All right, so I like Showmakers, but the lack of DPP hurts. If that's not important to you, I think he's probably my favourite. And then I'd say Dowling, and that's as much as he's got risk of being dropped. Kruger's injury risk is very high because he just doesn't play much football.
What did you tell me last time? He hasn't strung more than 3 games together for a long time, or ever.
Yeah, hasn't played more than 3 AFL games in a row, just constantly gets injured. And on that 102k front, I feel like beggars can't be choosers. You just pick Kynan Brown because he played and you hope for the best. I mean, if you got stuck with Georgie Payne, I think if you had a look at the North Melbourne fixtures, Geordie's not a good loop because they play so many early Saturday games. So you might want to look towards Max Hall, who might get a gig, but small forward for Saints. I don't expect like massive scoring, even though he might play. So you may as well just take the guy that actually is playing at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. And if you don't care about them playing at all, I believe West Coast still have a lot of Sunday games. So still a good loopies. But I would pick someone that's a chance to play like Brown.
Speaking of loopy, I think we've finished the podcast. Did you have any other things before to say? Yeah?
Just a little shout out. We talk about the buys being like a 4-week, block. You kind of can't get too upset if you have a down week 1 buy, or too high if you have a really good buy week, because it's about kind of the 4 buy weeks like as a whole. You kind of want to look at what you scored in those 4 rounds, kind of combine it. The aim is now to come out of this. You should have, especially if you're playing for rank, especially all 22 slots on field with, quote unquote premiums. Essentially no rookies on field now if you're playing for buy. So that should be your goal. But hopefully you climbed a little bit during the buys, maybe went up in rank. I've asked you to compile the data, so thank you for doing that for our Dr. Supercoach Patreons and how they all went during the buys. So it looks like, looking at this, if you scored 8,000 points over the buys, that's solid. You might have got a little rank rise from that. If you were kind of like in the 8,200 or 8,300, that's pretty massive, and you probably had some good jumps. So out of our Dr. Supercoach Patreons, we got like 600 or something.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, give or take. First place in the buys, the most scored in those 4 rounds, was Hung's team, Always Hungry. They scored a massive 8,472 in the 4 buy rounds.
That's enormous.
That's a monster. Then second was Gray's team, Thunderlips. They scored 8,440. And then third was Rebecca's team, B's team. They got 8,362. So just a shout out to those coaches that absolutely dominated their buys, like getting 8,300, or even like Hung's team, nearly 8,500 during the buys is just incredible.
And I'll give a 4th place shout out to my mate Takunda, Team Troll, with 8,312.
We'll fit him in.
His rank was flying during the buys. I think I saw Hung post that he went from, I think it was like just outside the 1K to like 115th.
Oh, that's incredible.
During the buys, which is just such an impressive rank rise. I mean, the patron group includes, Zero Pressure, who was coming first going into the buys, and leaving it finishing 7th. But he still scored a lot of points, and there was. I can't do the quick count in my head, but it looks like there was approximately 30 patrons that scored more than him, which is just incredible, given he scored 8,145 points during the buys, and that's quite hard to achieve. So to have so many people score so well across the buys, I really hope that they were good for your ranks, and it's something that they can continue on for the rest of the run home.
Yeah, hopefully it gives you a good platform now to finish strong. And on that, good luck to some of our guys in the top. Like, we got 3 Dr. Supercoach Patrons in the top 100. I think it was 33 in the top 1K, so we've got a few up there. And like you said, led by Zero Pressure at 7th at the moment, and then Gordon Fraser at 25th.
Excellent. All right. Well, speaking of platforms, you can find myself on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, at pistol_DRSC. You can find Chizo at Chizo with a Z_DRSC. I forgot you already, Pig. You can find Pig at Pig_DRSC and JB at JB_DRSC. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you all next week.